Welcome to today's telecast. Always good to be with you. We're going to get right on to the topic at hand in just a moment here with my guest, Brian Stiller, who I'll introduce also in a moment. But first of all, you can get in touch with me. You can text me. You see my text phone number there. Then you have the regular Grace Prayer Center number. And there's online. There's so many different ways. I'm probably forgetting one or two of them, but it comes there on the lower part of the screen. So if you just have an eye out for that, you will see it even a few times throughout the program. And we are dealing with a topic that is, I think, been overlooked by many of us, maybe not even considered spiritual. To be involved in the public square, isn't that religion and politics mixing? And so some people may have gone into one extreme where they almost equate a certain political party with God's kingdom and coming to our country, and others are just saying, I'll leave it with the Lord. I'm not going to get involved with that. But Brian Stiller is helping us here to take a look at this. And I would submit that what we're dealing with is a deeply spiritual activity. Christians speaking up in the public square. Brian's book, Jesus and Caesar, Christians in the Public Square, has been kind of the backdrop. You see it behind me here, and that's where we've been discussing this. And I came here, first of all, Brian, welcome to the program again. I almost got started here without welcoming you properly. Let me tell you who Brian is, from Saskatchewan originally, but he was the president of the Evangelical Fellowship of Canada and of Tyndale University, a great university here in our country, and is now the global ambassador of the World Evangelical Alliance. I think I got it right this time.
You did.
Okay.
Good to be here.
And I just wanted to show folks here, you know how my book looks. You see all these stickers. I was hoping to get to all of this, and the truth is I've got to very little. And then I have dog ears in the book here and there in addition to the stickers. And I was trying to get to a lot because I found this book has a tremendous amount of research, a lot of insight, and it deals with a topic that I would venture to say that many of you don't have any. You may have many Christian books, but dealing with this, and yet it's so front and center in the New Testament. And so, and we're going to tell you how you can receive it. I've been telling you it's almost out of print, so you got to be fast on the draw here. We'll tell you about that later on. But let's get right to it, Brian. Let me just recap before. Does God deal with nations? Is there a place for Christians in the public square?
A nation is part of God's enterprise. He created us like we are, and we are social beings. We have to find ways of working together. So the body politic is the way in which you and I and others figure out how we're going to live together in this space, in this time. And because we are God's enterprise, He's made us like we are. What we do is how He expects us to work, and that's to create the political environment in which we figure out how we solve issues, how we meet problems, how we help people. And because of that, God does care. He doesn't mean that He cares about one more than another. In Canada, we have particular opportunities and a history and a culture that in a sense makes it much easier for us to serve Christ. But the political enterprise is always a challenge for Christians, how you can serve God and how you can work with Caesar without replacing one with the other. But that's the challenge.
Now, I know that in some of these questions I'm asking, you have entire chapters in the book, so it'd be hard to address everything. But is there something we can learn from, well, obviously from Jesus we can learn a lot, or from the apostles, but particularly in their interaction with Rome? Rome was a pluralistic society. We can read about Paul's in Athens, for example, and I feel like he's almost describing Toronto there in Acts 17, or Montreal, or New York City. Are there things we can learn from Jesus and the apostles for us today?
The early church, of course, was unique, one of a kind. Its exploration into Rome, and because Rome was the military political enterprise that dominated for a few centuries, and because of that, and given the gradual movement of Christianity into Rome, there were times when it had great freedom. Other times it was greatly oppressed. So you can learn from those specific elements. But I think the big lesson that I would learn from is that they they were particularly concerned about expressing the gospel in ways that befitted their claims for being Christians, followers of Jesus, and allowed the Spirit to manifest Jesus within their lives. That eventually exploded out into the Roman world, and it influenced Rome. The difficulty that we have today is that we, in Canada, often, and America, the Western world especially, we expect our countries to be Christian because we think we were Christian at one point. And so when a country like Canada becomes more secular, we lament that we have lost our Christian past. I would suggest that in the past we weren't necessarily that Christian, but for us to figure out what it means to serve Christ and to be in this political enterprise called Canada today is a challenge. Let me just suggest one thing that sometimes people misunderstand. We live in a liberal, secular democracy. Now, some people think those are bad words. Liberal doesn't mean liberalism, to be liberal and to give away. Liberal means the right of the individual. It's a political, social term that came out of Europe centuries ago. And so when we talk about a liberal society, we don't talk about a society that gives everything away. We talk about a society that gives freedom to the individual. So key to Canada.
And let me say, that's good for the gospel.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's been the basis how we've been able to preach and share and build churches and ministries, because we have freedom to do that.
And we are a secular democracy. Now, being a secular democracy is a good thing, because I don't want your religion to be the dominant, to run the government. You don't want my religion to dominate the government. We want the government to be free from any religious domination, so that we are free we have religious freedom. So we want individual freedom. It's a liberal democracy. We want religious freedom. It's a secular democracy, and it's a democracy built upon the individual vote. So we have particular freedom in Canada because we are in that world. Here's the danger, is that the individual rights of the person, as Christians, we can get so caught up in our individual rights that my rights mean more than anything else. We can become self-centered. And the gospel isn't about my rights. The gospel is about Jesus. And I have to be careful that my rights don't dominate my expression of Jesus. It's a secular society. Now, sometimes secularity will say, because you are religious, you have no right to bring your ideas into government. That's not what a true secular society is about. A true secular society is saying, we aren't going to allow a religion to rule our country, but you, as people who are involved in the government, you have every right to bring your faith. Because I can't leave my faith at the door of the parliament. I have to be who I am. And if I am a follower of Christ, I'm going to be a follower of Christ, whether I'm here at home or in the government.
Many Christians find it annoying. I know I have, when politicians say, well, my faith is very personal. I don't bring it to the workplace. And I say, well, what kind of faith is that if you can't bring it to the workplace? So I'm glad you're making that very clear, that we can expect politicians, if they are believers in Christ, to find an expression for that faith within their workplace, not to dominate others, but to express their faith.
That's right. And it's important to understand what should be done, but also it's important to learn how to do that. So how, as a politician, for example, if you're a mayor of a town and you have faith, the gospel shapes your life. You don't vacate your faith when you walk into the town hall. But how do you take and live the gospel within that role? And because evangelicals were absent so long from the public square, it's taking us a while to figure out what it means. What are the disciplines? What are the attributes? What are the skill sets that I need to walk into the town hall as a follower of Jesus without using my position as mayor to dominate and to push people and push my faith down their throats?
Now, I want to get to that, because in your book, you have towards the end of the book, you have a couple of chapters that it deals with what steps to take and steps not to take. But I don't want to go there quite yet, because I want you to just first of all, talk about your role as the global ambassador with the World Evangelical Alliance, which represents about 650 million evangelicals. So you represent me, and you represent, he's your representative. If you're watching at home, this man represents you. And you and the organization, it doesn't mean that you do everything, but there are other players in that. You go to United Nations, you go to the European Union, you go to the House of Lords in Britain, different governments, and you speak on behalf of Christians in countries where some of them are killed for their faith. I mean, we had a story here from Pakistan, a woman that was pregnant, but for her faith, she was thrown alive into a furnace. And just, this was people who were close to us, who were involved with this. We knew the family. These kind of things makes, in some sense, our blood boil. We said that this, we got to put a stop to it. But you're actually out there in those places where you can have an influence. Talk about what you do there.
Well, the United Nations, as we know, is the world body where all governments meet. Geneva is where the human rights issues are dealt with, and so our Global Advocacy Center, it has special consultative status, which gives us the right to have our office in Geneva, and to make presentations on behalf of Christians in various countries. Now, also the World Evangelical Alliance, we have 140 national alliances around the world. In Canada, it's the Evangelical Fellowship of Canada. And so when an alliance in a country is facing persecution, we're able to work with that country alliance and with our Geneva office in bringing pressure to bear on the governments that are in violation of religious freedoms. And so that is an opportunity that we have given to us because the size, the large number of people we represent, and that means something to others, and because we have built reputation and we've built ability and competence in speaking into those circles and to gaining confidence among other countries that what we are saying is fair and legitimate and bona fide, and we can call them in to support us in dealing with a particular country that's in violation.
And I think we're going to show a clip here just because a picture's worth 1,000 words, so we're going to kind of give you a 1-minute presentation of that. But you've told me privately, you mentioned in our program yesterday, that you've had opportunities, you can't even mention the countries, but to meet people that are in authority within those countries and really present Christ. And that's what Paul did. You find Paul in the book of Acts, how he often went to the authority of the government. We do this in our campaigns. People say to me, do you work with all the churches? Yes, we work with all the churches. But if I can get the prime minister or the governor of a state to support one of our gospel outreaches, you know, the churches are all going to join me automatically. I don't have to work very hard with them. So I think we have to see the value of this. This is something extremely valuable, and it's very biblical. It's very spiritual. Here is that clip.
Millions of Christians live where their faith is forbidden or oppressed. Pastors are imprisoned, churches are shuttered, intolerance is encouraged, and the gospel witness is curtailed. Peter Youngren has seen firsthand the horrors of persecution, and in meetings with religious and political leaders, he often speaks about the need for freedom. World Impact Ministries is launching the Stand with Stephen Fund with a two-pronged approach. One, to help individual Christians that are persecuted. Second, to effect change within governments through the Global Advocacy Center, which has consultancy status at the United Nations. If a pastor is killed or a church is bombed, government leaders are rallied to create pressure on governments that tolerate persecution. Some of the work is by necessity secret, especially in countries where the gospel is forbidden. Partner with the Stand with Stephen ministry to help those who suffer for their faith in Christ.
As long as these books last and you share a gift of $50 or more to help persecuted Christians, we will send you Brian Stiller's books, Jesus and Caesar, Christians in the Public Square. And it is getting out of print, and we were able to get from Brian whatever he could find of them left. So we have this for you. I tell you, I'm going to keep one of these for myself to study it further. It is so very valuable. And to meet our goal, what we want to do, we're going to need many of you to do a lot more than $50, but I didn't want to give away for free. We give away a lot of things for free, and we don't mind doing that. It's a blessing to give. But I want you to see the value of this. So you see the information there, how you can order that book. And Brian, let me see here. I want to get it right out of your book. And all I remember, it was page 162, so I'm going to go there. Yeah, I found this very helpful in a very practical way. You talk about basically what not to do and what to do in the public square. Believers, born again believers, they have a heart for Canada. They want to do something for our country. They have a burden. We meet them all the time when we travel across the country. People express this. And so here you have some very practical, helpful steps. I think it's called steps to sit at the table. In other words, in this pluralistic society. Give some of those to us there. I'll let you go at it. I interrupt you when I feel.
I think we begin, and I'll come to those itemized, but let me give the broad strokes here. It's to have an attitude that God cares about the political enterprise, about the public square, whether it's the school system, whether it's the local or provincial government, or whatever you would describe as the public square for you, that God cares about it, and to have an attitude of a loving and a prayerful attitude towards them that's communicated both by how you think, but what you say to your spouse, to your children, to your neighbors. Because if you have hostility towards the mayor in Red Deer and don't like what's going on in Red Deer or wherever, you're never going to engage in that enterprise because you have shown you despise it, you hate it, you disagree with it. So why would you even associate? Why would you even give it some time? So attitudes matter. Understanding that God cares about it and that He calls us to be His light and salt within that world. So the first thing I would say is, whatever you're dealing with, get your facts straight. Don't go off someone who has told you on social media that this is the way it is. Make sure that you research and that you have your facts straight. Figure out what the real issue is. If you're concerned about something that's going on, don't hyperbolize from one idea to another. Make sure you know what the real issue is. Mm-hmm. Then know what the other arguments are. Be able to explain the person that you disagree with, explain their arguments better than they can. Figure out what the arguments are.
I said I interrupt you once in a while. Let me say this, for example, this also works in evangelism. I mean, if I go to a Buddhist country, I am a representative of Jesus Christ. I want to know what they think about God, so I can start talking to them in a way that they understand it. If I go to a Muslim culture, I want to understand how they view it, if they were to express their own faith, because that enables me to present Jesus Christ. So it's really, and you find that about Paul again in Acts 17. He didn't come and wave his Bible and say, here I am. He looked at how they viewed it. They had many altars, one to an unknown God. He took it from their perspective. So I'm just getting fired up listening to you.
Because if I want to convince you of something, I want to know what you think and why you think it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Get to know the major players.
Yeah.
Meet them. Become friends with them. Have coffee with them. Hear from them. Ask about their family, their children. Then know how the system works.
I got to interject. This is so important. Don't ever when some of our outreaches in Pakistan, which is 98% Muslim, my former co-worker, he's gone to be with the Lord, Paul Cowell, he would bring chewing gum to a member of parliament in Karachi, Pakistan, to give to his kids. He got invited to the home. He's giving a little Wrigley spearmint and this and that they didn't have there. And it opened the door. Go ahead.
Just be caring.
Yeah.
Figure out how the system works.
Yeah.
Understand what the procedures are. And then get to the table. You can't do anything if you aren't at the table. Find a way to get at the table. And then build coalitions. Build with others. Don't just come there alone. If you have, so for example, on the pro-life issue in Canada, we have worked together with the Muslim community and the Catholic community as evangelicals, and we find ways that we have much in common on a particular issue that concerns us. And then know what compromise really is. Compromise is a good word. I've lived for 56 years in compromise with Lily. She's compromised. And we find joy in compromise. Now, when I work in the public square with somebody who believes something very different to what I believe, Am I compromising when I learn to get along with them? No. I still hold to what I believe, what are the essentials, but then that really calls into question, what are the essentials of the gospel? When as a follower of Jesus, at what point do I insist that my economic views are synonymous with Christian views? Mm-hmm. When I make my social economic theories or values the same as Christian values, do I insist on? So ask what really matters to me. What am I prepared to give up? What am I not prepared to give up? And that allows then freedom to work in a compromise, not to give up what is valuable, what is good, because that's what you want to bring to the table. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. When you have salt and light, you aren't going to throw away the salt. You aren't going to darken the light. You're going to hold to those things because that's what you have to bring to the table. So figure out what it is and then build those coalitions, build the friendships, understand that we are all people with all the dynamics of personhood, understand that, and be a good neighbor. The parables of Jesus, all the parables, they just filter their way through this whole conversation, and especially the one of the Good Samaritan. What does it mean to be a Good Samaritan, to care for another? And if I ask the question, in this situation, how would this parable of the Good Samaritan apply to me here? That's a good way of thinking about it.
I think this is so important. So before you go to the next point, defining what compromise is and what it isn't. This is what you're doing here, really, because many Christians, they love the Lord, they're committed to God, they just don't want to do anything that would hurt their relationship with the Lord. So the moment you start talking like this, they say, well, I don't want to compromise. And I say, well, Jesus was a friend of sinners, and I don't think any one of us would say that he compromised or became less of a Jesus when he ate and drank with sinners. So sometimes I think religious ideas have darkened our minds, and we made it mean something that it doesn't really mean in the scripture. So thank you for
And usually we think it's this way or this way. Mm-hmm. So we deal with, if I can't do it this way, then this is the other way. What I talk about triangulation. What's the third way? What's the gospel way? I have my way, your way, but is there another way? Is there another way that we can work on this, we can solve? Is there something else we can bring? How would Jesus operate in this situation? And that's not to be superfluous to ask that question. I think it comes to the very core of the matter. Because if you're a Christian in the public square, you're asking, when I'm working with Caesar, what is God's and what is Caesar's? You see, that story when they ask what's God's and what's Caesar's, is that while the coin that Jesus was using, it had Caesar's image imprinted on it. Mm-hmm. And Caesar had mined it out of his own mines. It was his own coin. So obviously you give to Caesar what is Caesar's. But who is Caesar's? Caesar belongs to God. So if I give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, ultimately it's God's in the final situation.
Brian, we have a problem. We've had every program. We're running out of time. Yeah. So I'm going to let you get the book to get the rest of those points, because I want to just fast forward and give you 2 minutes on what doesn't work. I think you had that, let me see, page 165. What will not work, 165. At least I have the pages memorized here. So just highlight that. You got about 2 minutes, not even that, about a minute and a half.
Don't impose yourself on others. You know how I don't like to be imposed on. So imposing my views on others and jamming it down people's throats, it just backs them off. So don't impose your views. Don't build barriers. Don't create those kind of oppositions that get the people who are at the core of the public square angry or upset with you. If you're dealing with a teacher or a superintendent of school boards, what you want to do is break down the barriers, don't build them up. Then the other option, of course, is do nothing. Just walk away from it and let it go. But what does it mean to be a Christian in today's world? What does it mean to be a Christian in the public square? It is to engage. It is to utilize the giftings and the opportunities that you and I have where we are as a salt and light. To be yeast, to allow that dough to build up its air and its form and its substance so it's of great value to people. What an opportunity we have here in this country to serve Christ and to allow him to be where he allows us to be the vehicle and the channel through which God speaks and blesses the society of which we have honored to be part of.
And I hope if you have had the thought that maybe the most spiritual thing was to just wash your hands and leave it with the Lord, I hope you've got some food for thought. Because we are occupiers in this world. We are representatives of Jesus Christ. Brian's book is available through our ministry, but first, watch this video.
Millions of Christians live where their faith is forbidden or oppressed. Pastors are imprisoned, churches are shuttered, intolerance is encouraged, and the gospel witness is curtailed. Peter Youngren has seen firsthand the horrors of persecution, and in meetings with religious and political leaders, he often speaks about the need for freedom. World Impact Ministries is launching the Stand with Stephen Fund with a two-pronged approach. One, to help individual Christians that are persecuted. Second, to effect change within governments through the Global Advocacy Center, which has consultancy status at the United Nations. If a pastor is killed or a church is bombed, government leaders are rallied to create pressure on governments that tolerate persecution. Some of the work is by necessity secret, especially in countries where the gospel is forbidden. Partner with the Stand with Stephen ministry to help those who suffer for their faith in Christ.
It's amazing what God can do when someone is willing to go to that public square and how God opens doors. One thing I've found about people that I've met in the political realm, presidents or prime ministers, they all have personal needs. And once you get to know them, very often they say, would you pray for me, pray with me about such and such, even from different religions. And so I'm so glad that we can stand with the Global Advocacy Center, and they are specifically speaking into a situation where there is such terrible, horrible persecution, even killing, to alter the rulings in governments, to affect governments. Do you think God is big enough to do that? I say he is. Can we help and empower the Global Advocacy Center that works, especially in Geneva, but also other United Nations offices, and works with government? Thank you so much. And for those who will give $50 or more, as long as supplies last, we will send you Brian's book, and because it's only a limited supply left. So, and then if you have anything personal, you want to contact me, you see the information has been there, you can call our Grace Prayer Center. We'd love to hear from you. And remember, you are loved.
Thank you. Your participation makes this global gospel ministry possible. To share your prayer request or to help bring the gospel to those who have never heard it, call 416-745-1820. You can give at www.peteryoungren.org or send your gift to World Impact Ministries at P.O. Box 62039, RPO, Victoria Terrace, North York, Ontario, N4A 2W1. Or P.O. Box 433, Winchester, Kentucky, 40392-9800. Together, let's give everyone a chance to know God's love in Jesus Christ.